So I assume that we are now live, and I first want to welcome everyone to our meeting. And I want to first also thank my co-chair, Alejandra, and Rich Lefredo, who really do the lion's share of the work, keeping us going, keeping our projects going, and all of you who I know have stepped up and helped a lot when Rich and Allie need our assistance and our guidance and our opinion. So I don't believe we have any new members, do we?
We do not, Your Honor.
Right, so, and I also want to thank Attorney FICA for joining us. She's always great about doing that, and we love her input from the legal services perspective. Very, very helpful. I first would ask, I know all of you received the minutes. I first would ask you to, for us to approve the minutes, see if we can approve. I'll ask if you have all received it and if anyone would make a motion.
I have received it.
Yeah, I
I'll make
received
a motion that we approve.
And reviewed it.
Mhm.
Any motion to approve?
I'll motion that we approve it. Brandon Pellegano.
I'll
Thank
second.
Second, thank you. Any discussion about the minutes? All in favor, if you would either say aye or raise your virtual hand, whichever is easier.
Aye.
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 I believe, any nays? Any abstentions? Seeing none, that approves the minutes. As you know, I rely heavily on Richard and Allie to give us updates about the training and the different things that are going on with ITS. So I'm going to turn it over to Richard to give us an update on LEP training. I know that we had judges not that long ago, and that there are other projects in the works, some of which you received some samples in the mail. Richard.
Yes. Thank you, Your Honor. And good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. So the LEP training update, at the last several meetings, we've talked about developing an online refresher training for all judicial branch staff. We have the current version of the LEP training that's required of all employees, but it's only they take it once and that's it. So it's many years since when a lot of them have taken that initial 2-hour online course. So what we would like to do now, as we've spoke about, is creating this online refresher course. We sent out a draft version probably about a month ago, give or take. And I've gotten feedback from most everybody. What we've done with that feedback is we've made those edits into the training. And what I'd like to do next is, now that we have all of those edits, I'd like to send it out one more time to everybody. If they can take one last look at it, I'm 99.9% sure everybody's edits have been incorporated, just to make sure what you asked for is in there. And if there's anything else that you see that you would like changed. And then so I'll probably try to send that out sometime today, give everybody a couple of weeks to take a look at it and send us back any comments. And then what the next step in the process would be is to work with the employee education unit in actually developing it into an online training. I know what we send out. The talking points are great to read. I know the slides are a bit jumbled because of the system that the first version is in, because it's they come up individually. So during the PowerPoint presentation, so they all get jumbled on the printout. So it doesn't work great. But hopefully we'll work with them, employee education, where we'll actually be able to send out then a link to everybody to review with the actual speaking piece being done and all of that before it's finally approved. But the outstanding question we do have to answer is, when we recommend it to Judge Carroll, how often do we want to require the training to be for all staff to take it? The Justice Index survey that we do every, I don't recall if it's every other year or every third year. I don't recall how often the survey comes out. The recommendation is that we should be providing training to employees at least once every 3 years. So the question would be, do we recommend to Judge Carroll, do we do it once every 3 years, or do we do something at a shorter interval of once every 1 year or every 2 years? I envision that hopefully the training will be no more than the 35 to 45 minute range is kind of the hope. So it will be a relatively short course to take, but would love to hear folks' input on their thoughts of 1 versus 2 versus 3 years. Brandon, then Troy.
So I don't know if many of my peers would be happy with me saying this, but I think the more frequent training, in my opinion, the better. We are, and I speak, I don't want to say I speak on behalf of, but I'm speaking as a clerk. I see so many, we are all forward facing, and I see so many members of the public coming in, and it's almost as if it's a daily, twice a day need that someone has that needs these services. And I often see my team struggling because they don't have that training. So the 3 years, absolutely not. Me personally, even if they put a 2-year, I'm probably going to ask the entire Hartford district, as long as it's acceptable, every 6 months, take the half hour, 40 minutes and take this training, because it's just a refresher. How hard is it to take a half hour, 45 minutes to learn and kind of ingrain what it is we need to know how to do the second someone walks in? I really don't want to see someone come through our doors and any of my offices struggle with how do we help you because you speak a different language. I want it to be fluent, for pun intended. I just want it to be a fluent process. They come in, we see they speak a different language. We have the iSpeak cards, we have the phones, we have, whatever we need, we have it right there and we're familiar with it. So for what it's worth, my suggestion would be, quite honestly, every 6 months.
Okay. Troy?
Yeah, I wouldn't go with Brandon every 6 months. But like Brandon, I think it should happen far more frequently than every 3 years. First of all, I'd like the training. I'm looking forward to seeing the actual articulate where I can actually take it and hear the voices and so forth. So whatever the education unit can do and put that together, that'd be great. I think it's a vital need. I think that we should do it more frequently. I'm just not sure if every judicial employee needs it at the same interval. And so, and I will support you in this, Brandon. Maybe the clerk's office needs it every 6 months. Maybe a probation officer needs it once a year. Maybe an administrator, in Glastonbury needs it every other year. And I don't know if that is an option that we can do. If so, I would like us to at least consider at least every other year, but there are certain departments that clearly need it more frequently than that. Because when it comes up, if you haven't had to make a receive a request or figure out how to ask for a request, you're looking through policies and procedures trying to figure this stuff out. And we want people to know this right off the top of their head immediately, because it's that important. So I think it should be some type of staggered intervals depending on the specific department and the urgency that the department may have to respond to some of these requests.
Okay. Thanks, Troy. That's a good point. Justice Khan.
I agree with both Brandon and Troy. I think they're spot on. I like Troy's, clarification that for some people it is true. They don't encounter the need as frequently, but they still need to know it. So maybe every 2 years. As far as judges, I think they too need the reminder, not just what we do in judge school, not just occasionally the reminder, because sometimes there's a disconnect between what we have and what we offer, and either they forget or, you know, and one idea I had was to ask, and I don't know how that's possible, but it seems like there may be certain employees that need more hands-on attention, whether they're judges or whether they are frontline staff. So I agree with the idea that frontline staff or staff that deal with the public or members, any stakeholder that's LEP, limited English proficient, should get more training. I wonder if there's a way that in addition to this mandated training, if we encounter someone that seems to not quite understand either what's available or the seriousness of the need to provide adequate services or, you know, reasonable access, that we have a system, whether it's, you know, one or two people, whether it's someone from the chief court administrator's office and their supervisor, if it's a clerk's office issue, if it's a judge, whatever the issue is, that person be sort of, hey, don't just, not an email, you have to do this training, but speaking to them about why they're being asked to redo the training. Maybe they need to redo the training with someone's assistance there, or some kind of in-person training. And I think, Rich and Allie, you can think of some examples that are coming to my mind in terms of the need for that.
Yes.
So if we could do that, if there's a way to explore that, I think it's definitely worthwhile. And also, you know, the message goes out to other people to say, oh, you know, my colleague had to go to extra training because they didn't, you know,
Sure.
They weren't paying attention or they forgot very easily. And so that may help sink in.
No, it's also a good point. Troy, going back to your point, I do like the, I do agree. There are obviously different classes of folks who need it at, you know, different levels, you know, like the folks upstairs where I am at 90 Washington and admin services, there are some offices up there that have no interaction at all with the general public. I don't know how easily that is to track from an auditing perspective to make sure, you know, different classes get the training, but I can definitely speak to Janice Calvi and company over in our employee group about that. About the logistics of doing that.
Yeah. If I can jump in real quick,
yeah.
I think that'd be wise to speak to Janice. I know that our learning management system has learning plans in them, and I believe that they're starting to expand on that a little bit more. And so what could happen, or what is possible to happen, is Rich Lefredo could have a learning plan that says, based on the fact that he's in the court and needs, you know, to have this training frequently, every year it would show up on your learning plan and you would automatically have to do it. Where Justice Khan, who may not be in the court, for example, it can show up on her learning plan every other year. And so for a new employee, it would show up immediately when they start employment take the 2-hour course. And then thereafter, depending on what category they're in, it could show up on their learning plan for every year or every other year. So our learning management system has that built into it. Whether or not you're capable of using it right now is the question that I think Janice can best answer, or she, along with some other folks in the training departments, could best answer.
Okay, no, that's great. I did not know that.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead, George.
What we as a committee would have to do is probably poll our disciplines and departments to find out, hey, Brandon, how often should clerks get it? You know, hey, Alejandra, how often should so-and-so get it, administrator get it, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
No, that's a good idea. Viv, before I get to you, just one question as a follow-up to Justice Khan. Do you think judges would be receptive to taking it if we were to create an online course? I don't know. I don't think this version would work well for judges because a lot of this is like on the ordering process. But if an online training was created, I don't know if there are other online trainings that judges are required to take, if that's something that they would be receptive to.
Well,
take it.
I obviously I would defer to the Chief Court Administrator,
Sure.
Chief Justice, and the Deputy Chief Court Administrator, Judges Carol Bizzuto and Chief Justice Robinson. Obviously I would imagine some may like it more than others. Some may embrace it, some may not. I'm sure we'd have the spectrum that we probably would in any employment setting. Having said that, I do agree. I think some of the training is probably maybe not as geared towards what judges do, but I do think it's important for judges to know how the clerk's office staff are trained. What are they told is available? Because sometimes they may assume in the courtroom, oh, this person speaks Urdu. I can't get an Urdu interpreter, not realizing that actually we may be able to get, there's no 100% guarantee, but we might, with a few hours notice, be able to get an Urdu interpreter, or we may be able to get someone on the phone. They may not know our remote abilities. So for example, we have 80 remote hearing rooms throughout every courthouse. And what I'm learning when I put on my hat as Access to Justice co-chair is that maybe not every judge in every courthouse is fully aware that there are these rooms with the equipment that they can access, that not they, but litigants,
Sure,
represented or self-represented or otherwise, maybe could go to the room and use the room to do a remote hearing. So I think it would be good for judges to know what's available and what staff is told is available. But I also think that judges need refresher. They are not different from any other employee. And I think that maybe that can be done. Obviously, I would have to defer to the Chief Court Administrator, but maybe it would be in the context of every year at the rotation around September, October, every division, the criminal division, the civil division, housing, family, juvenile, the chief judge, administrative judge for each of that subject does a half-day program for all the judges assigned to do family, or assigned to do housing, or assigned to do criminal. And so maybe it could be as part of that annual program where we remind judges, we ask for, it could even be a 10-15 minute slot where we say, look, these are the issues that are coming up. You're not using the system properly to request interpreters. You're canceled a hearing, but you don't let ITS know, and we could use the resources elsewhere. This is what's available. Don't assume we can't get an interpreter. Don't interpret for somebody. You're the judge, you can't interpret. These kinds of reminders, I think, are really important to have. And so I'd be happy to, with you and Allie, speak with our Chief Court Administrator and Deputy Chief Court Administrator about, we've done it before. When I was a trial judge, we had the slots to do that. So that might not be a bad idea.
Okay. Viv.
Yes, I'm leaning towards requiring annual training for everyone, and then letting each supervisor determine whether they want it to be more frequent. So if Brandon wants his employees to get it every 6 months, let every supervisor determine it, because I think doing it by class might be difficult, but maybe giving the supervisor discretion might be an easier way to do it.
No.
Would you give them discretion? You wouldn't give them discretion to go less than a year, though. Correct.
The baseline would be 1 year. That's mandatory for everybody. And if they want to do it every 6 months, every 3 months, depending on what they see, in the clerk's office and in the marshal's division, then they could require it more frequently. But the baseline would be 1 year.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. No, very good. Anybody else have any thoughts on how quickly or how often to do the training? Okay. No, thank you. This is helpful, and we don't have to decide ultimately this today. I wouldn't present this to Judge Carroll for approval until we have the training in a more finalized state. So it's closer to actually launch, because I know it takes time for everything to actually work through the process to actually go live. So what we'll do as next steps is later on today, I will resend out the training to everybody. If folks could take a look at it over the next couple of weeks, if they have any changes between now and, I know with the holidays and everything, people's schedule may be different. So between now and the end of the year, looking at it, and then come January, we'll incorporate everything into it, and then I'll work with Janice's group on trying to get it into a recorded format that we could share with everybody. And then at that point in time, probably for our next meeting, we'll be able to actually finalize the training and then have a plan in place to present to Judge Carroll. And I'll follow up in the interim, I'll follow up with Janice on just to know what the logistics would be if we were to do based on different classes for turnaround time, to see whether that's an option or not, or we go with that route, or we go with Viv's route with a set 1 year, and then giving the flexibility of doing something less. And then I do think judge training is extremely important. We really haven't done any training for the judges since you, Justice Khan, when we went out and did those divisional meetings probably several years ago now. So there were, other than the new judges that have been trained during pre-bench, the sitting judges have not been trained. So I think a refresher for them would be good. So I think coming up with a format for that on whether it's online or doing the divisional trainings again. I know in the ADA world, we're planning on doing a training for the judges at CJI this year on ADA issues. So that also just a different idea of whether CJI, whether the divisional meetings or an online course or some sort of combination of all of them.
Is it a plenary course for ADA?
Yes.
I wonder how set the agenda is because we're only in we're in December, and having been on the education committee for 8 years, we typically started meeting in September, and then the Chief Court Administrator's office there were certain courses that had to be done. So for example, ADA would be plenary, and then we would be told, we had to come up with courses in the different subject matter areas depending on what the issues were. But usually the agenda, when we got ideas from the different respective areas and came up with a course curriculum for CJI, usually was around this time. It wouldn't be too late to add an LEP piece. However, the Chief Court Administrator's office wants to handle it, I'd be happy to assist even behind the scenes. I know that.
What about in front of the scenes?
So I'm happy to help. I really think that this training is critical. And I think that as courts open, and certainly even in COVID times, this is really important, and we should do it. So I would definitely reach out to the Chief Court Administrator, because then he can, I don't know if it's still Judge Whetstone, Avery Whetstone, who was the chair of the Education Committee.
I believe it's Judge Goodrow and
Goodrow, yeah.
I forgot who the second judge is. I want maybe Judge Westbrook.
Yeah, Westbrook is who I'm thinking. I'm sorry. Yes. So she may still be doing it. I'd be happy to reach out to them with the, of course, after consulting with our chief court administrator. But that is something I definitely would put on the list very soon, because they could probably still put you in. CJI is usually in June.
June, right.
So we would have ample time to put a course together.
Okay. What I can do is just to follow my protocol is I'll talk to Ty Erickson,
Yes.
The executive director of court operations, about that, and make that suggestion, and then move it up from there.
And please tell her that I thought it was pretty important for us to do a refresher and include new judges as well.
Yes.
They could,
That would be helpful.
Yes.
Perfect. Very good. We will definitely do that. That is all I have on training. The website. At our last meeting, we discussed, we finalized the format of the revised LEP page on the branch's website. I would like to thank Viv. She was able to facilitate moving that through the web board process. And it has now since been launched. It was launched in, the English version was launched in June. The Spanish, Portuguese, and Polish version went live in September. It was modeled, as everybody knows, after our revisions to the ADA page. I think it's a much cleaner, user-friendly version than what we had out there. I will say there is the link on the page for LEP, for the email pay, an email account that Allie and I oversee, lep.jud.ct.gov, that we've had people actually using it. Seeing that, we've had LEP individuals emailing us about telling us that they need the services, and then we communicate back and forth with them and then the clerk's office to get the services effectuated. So it's so not only is the page look nicer, it's also much more functional now, because we did not have that initially. In the prior version of the web page, there was no email account or that access. So I think that's a great thing that's being utilized in that way. So it's helpful. So I do thank everybody. I thank Viv for facilitating. I thank everybody's for their input on that as we were developing that. I think it's a much better page than what we had before.
That's great. That's wonderful. And I think the best news is knowing that people are actually using it and contacting you is confirmation that this is a much better website layout. Thank you.
Absolutely. Forms. So as we've discussed in past meetings regarding forms, we were kind of working on two different things. The language to kind of cue to the clerks that forms have been translated into other languages, which, as reported at a prior meeting, has been effectuated, and legal services, as forms are being revised, are adding that language to it. So I think that that's terrific. But we discussed at our last meeting, kind of as an outgrowth from the Justice Index Access to Justice survey, where one of the recommendations was having on the forms that interpreter services are available at no charge. And that is something that has been lacking. We don't have that on our forms. So Viv and Carlo and the folks over at Legal Services, Allie and I have met with them a few times, and they've kind of taken the ball from that and ran with it. And they've put together a proposal, which I think, in my opinion, I think looks great. that was emailed to everybody yesterday, which is the language at the bottom of that sample form, where it has the kind of icons and then also language that interpreter services are available. So I guess what initially folks thought on that, and kind of going from there. Justice Koenig.
I saw it when you circulated it a couple of days, I think 2 days ago, and I have it here in front of me. What I love about it is the visuals. So even if you have an LEP individual that does not read or write, they can see. If you have an individual who is deaf or hard of hearing, you have the sign language sign for interpretation. So I really think that the flags, the person speaking with the flags and the sign language symbol, and then the web page and in Spanish, Portuguese, and I assume the other is Polish, our other
yes,
language,
yes.
which I cannot read. I can read the two, but not the third. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful, and if it can be included in the forms, I love it. I think it's in a very short space tells a lot of information. And this should be in the training for staff, like staff should see this, and hopefully judges. It reinforces the message again. So thank you.
Michelle and then Brandon.
So as an attorney who deals with LEP clients all the time, I really, really appreciate the flags and the banner below in terms of it's just a short statement about having the interpreter services. I mean, one thing that I would like to just suggest is that same language with those 3 lines of text, if they could be added to other types of notices. So for instance, the JD and Nos that go out that are all in English, and then if there's just those 3 little lines at the bottom, I think that's going to go a long way in terms of giving people just the awareness that they can reach out to judicial, because, so for instance, I just had a client yesterday who, she called us, she was a pro se client, and she called us asking for an explanation of what the JD&No was. And I think having those lines would just give her the knowledge that she can, that she can reach out to judicial instead of, her friend to translate. And, it's probably a better thing for her to contact judicial anyway, just so, because it might be a remote hearing where you have to, update an email address or something like that.
No, that is a very good point, Michelle. Thank you. I admittedly do not know at all what the logistics of that would be. Whether that's an IT question or a court ops question, but I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, and I think that, there are different, I can tell from just the text of the JD and Nos that some of them seem to be forms. It's the same language that I keep saying case in, case out. I imagine that it's harder to change the text for those ones that are more specific, like, Judge so-and-so made this order on X date. But I think the JD and No is different anyway, because it is notifying them of an important court date, and you wouldn't want that to get lost.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Brandon, do you have your hand up still?
I just wanted to comment that I love how that looks, and I think it's a great asset to all of our forms. I was concerned originally about how, if the flags would look washed out, because when we print, everything's black and white. But after printing it, one flag looked a little washed out, but it's very clear and distinct. So you get the point. So I just wanted to say that personally, I think it's a great idea that we've done.
Yeah. Viv may be saying what I'm about to say, but I will have Viv say.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to address the selection of the flags. The flags that were included are all from countries that speak Polish, Spanish, and Portuguese, I believe. Do we
Right.
want to keep those flags, or do we want to target other languages that are not, that we provide services for? So those were thrown out there as a placeholder, but we can always change the flags if that's the decision.
I guess to me, it's the idea of the flags more than which particular flag, because someone may not know, well, I know the Portuguese, the Brazilian flag, the Mexican flag, but so I don't know that folks will say, oh, it's, recognize the flags, just that the idea is, oh, they have various countries or even if somebody thought, well, they don't have my flag, they could at least go on the website or ask somebody. So I don't know that matters. And I think that the Department of Justice's recommendation is that states' judicial branches consistently look at their stats and what's being asked, and that they should at least target the top 2 or 3 languages, which is what we've always done. So if we exclude those flags, it might be, more problematic, because those are the languages that we know we get 95% of our requests, about 89 is Spanish,
Yep.
and then 3% Polish, 3% Portuguese. So I'd hate to eliminate, what's the bulk. But I think the idea of just flags in general, and obviously the sign language sign, would suggest that we're not being limited to one particular type of interpretation. So that would be my suggestion, to kind of keep the countries that we get the most requests from.
Michelle, then Troy.
Oh, I already spoke. I'm sorry. I'm going to
it's
raise
okay.
my hand.
Not a problem. Troy.
Yeah, I agree with Justice Khan. I think the flags there are just a representation to let folks know that this is referencing different languages. I like that. I think it's great. I didn't even think about what Brandon said, that we might be printing this out in black and white. So I haven't looked at it in black and white, but I certainly will take a look. I do have a quick question, and that is, if the form is multiple pages, will this footer show up on each additional page?
It's contemplated to only appear on the first page.
Got it.
And Troy, I did print it in black and white. At work, I don't have easily have a color printer, and the cost is pretty high. So I typically print in black and white. And Brandon is right. I mean, I could easily see the flags, even what country, and I'm not great with identifying flags. So I think you'll be, when you see it, it is pretty impressive that it's that small and they got that level of detail with such clarity.
Got it.
The only issue, and Viv will correct me, is obviously certain forms, there's only so much real estate on all of the forms.
Yeah.
So if the real estate is lacking, we may end up losing the flags on some forms, but the actual translations will still remain. The translations will be there on every form. We may end up losing the flags if there's not enough space to fit the flags and the translation on every form. I don't know what that number of forms would be where that difference will happen. Hopefully not a lot, but there will be some forms that may not have flags if there's not enough space to put all of that material in. Okay. So everybody, it sounds like, Michelle, is your hand up now?
It is actually. So before we move on to the next topic, I know that at some point there had been discussion about putting the actual languages that the form was translated in I think it was going to be either in the top part or in the bottom. So I know that it says it's translated into other languages, but was there not enough real estate to put, Espanol, Portuguese, or that's it? Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's correct. And it would be very difficult to keep track as more forms are translated into additional languages.
And Michelle, as an additional point, the Department of Justice and the recommendations from the national aspect is that the forms that we contain, that there's the ability to translate, that this type of notice is recommended. Not many states do it. It was in the last meeting or 2 meetings ago, we looked at all the recommendations, went through the report to see what were we not doing that we could, or what could we add? And this was something that we agreed we should explore. It's very difficult to get space on forms.
Yes,
I know from
I
other
agree.
aspects of just programmatic, I'm sure Brandon can tell you, when clerk's office wanted certain things that people filing forms should check off, and there just isn't enough space on the form. So the fact that we got this is, I'm just so pleased. But I think that that's the reason, you know, and keep in mind, we got to reprint them every time we change a form.
That's true.
So it's best to be as broad and as general as we can.
Brandon.
So I'll just throw this out there, and I agree completely. I just query if in the future, as we have a form that's translated into another language, maybe we just put the title of the form in italics rather than add anything else. And that's an indicator to someone that works in the court that, yes, this form is translated into another language. I do know in our offices, we are often jumping to our workstations, just looking it up quickly in FormFlow or the website to see if it's in other languages. But if the title was in italics and that just got instilled in all of us out here, that means it's in another language. What language, we're not sure, we'd have to check. That might be an easier way, but again, that's maybe something down the road we consider.
Huh. That might be a possibility, or then just a T next to it, or a T in translated in like a symbol that it's been translated, and that should prompt people to know that that's the case. Maybe that could be a universal. I know that at least the last time I went to look on our forms, like on the internet site, not on our intranet, but on the internet, and went to the LEP page in the forms. If you pull up forms, it will show sometimes, it will show if it's available in Spanish, like the line underneath. But maybe if we had a symbol, like a copyright symbol, but it's just a translated, but then that requires the training, right? That requires the chief clerks in each courthouse to make sure their staff know to look for that. I think your clerk's office is exemplary in that, and I think that comes from the leadership. But I think that level of that has to go hand in hand with the training. But you're right, that's something we could explore possibly. I don't know what you, Rich, Viviana, or Allie think, but that might be possible.
It definitely saves real estate on a form having a symbol as opposed to the text. But you're right, Your Honor. It comes down to the training piece of it, where with the text, it's in your face. You see, the form is available in other languages, so it's right there. You can't miss it. Where a symbol, if they're trained properly, absolutely. But if not, they may miss it.
I like the text as long as there's room, because it not only notifies staff, but also members of the public who get a copy of the form. But if you just use a symbol, the public wouldn't know.
That is true.
That is true. I think it's something that we can explore. In addition, I do want to thank, as Rich did, Viviana, because I know how hard it is to get. I think all of us here, maybe Attorney Fika, you don't know perhaps, but the struggle it is to get, because there's so much information to gather. to get real estate on forms can be very tricky. So I think it's an idea we need to definitely pursue. But I want to make sure that Vivian gets a little bit of a rest before we go. Let's get this done, and then I think we definitely, I think Attorney Fika, Brandon, all of your ideas I think are great, and we should definitely pursue them if we can.
All right, so I will make sure that it's okay to move forward on that recommendation. And once we get the okay from 231, I will communicate that to Viv, and then legal services can start actually the process of implementation.
Sounds good.
Perfect. The interpreter card. I believe it was at our last meeting, 2 meetings ago, Heather mentioned the kind of the quick card that was being created on the ADA side for the public libraries, and we thought it would be a good idea to have a similar version on the LEP side. At our last meeting, we finalized the language of that card. And I, in my email, either yesterday or the day before, I sent out the final version of that card that was sent to the public libraries. And it was also translated into Spanish, Portuguese, and Polish. And my understanding was distributed to the public libraries in those 4 languages, English, Spanish, Portuguese, Polish, this past July. So I think that's a great thing, another tool, another avenue out there to get this information out to the general public. Justice Khan.
Yes, if you don't mind, I'd like to just give this committee a quick update. As you know, I chair the Access to Justice Commission, and Richard is absolutely correct. At our last meeting, the Libraries and Access to Justice Work Group, of which Heather Collins was very active and a member, and I've got to thank her for her idea and her suggestion. Without her, this would not have happened. Jeffrey Dowd, who co-chairs that work group, circulated this very interpreter card, and they were very excited to get it and very grateful to our LEP committee and to you, Allie, and to Richard and Heather for working with them to put together this card. And so I want to thank you. I want you to know that the members of the Access to Justice Commission, were impressed to hear about it. And to put it in context, that work group created this idea with all the libraries, not just our court libraries, judicial libraries, but public libraries, created a program. They have some funding to have what they call legal centers or kiosks, similar to court service centers, and librarians will be trained to assist members of the public who come in and need a referral, whether it's for legal aid services, whether it's for the CBA, and we have members of the legal aid services on our commission, and they will work with, the librarians will be trained, because often people will go to the library, they have a legal problem, but they don't even understand they have a legal problem. So the ADA training or card, along with the LEP card, informs the public and the librarians of what we offer in terms of language services. So that's the part, in part, the context in which it will be used. It will be available in those centers, and librarians will be trained. Which brings me to another recommendation out of that group that will request assistance from us. And Allie, I hope you and Richard don't mind, but I completely offered up your services. And that is that they are creating public service announcements.
Yes.
And would like to have them translated, or at least have some part of the public service announcement be in Spanish or Portuguese or Polish. And they were looking for interpreters. And I said, I am certain that you will have tremendous assistance from Ally and the ITS, Richard and ITS team. So if they've not reached out to you, it was announced at our public meeting, and they will be reaching out to you for that.
Yes, actually, Judge, we're working on the recordings at this point with Allison and with Jeff.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And
Yep.
thank you for doing this card. And I just want to reiterate, this is why I think it's important for Access to Justice to get reports from our committee and other committees where there is, obviously we're under that umbrella, and that we can assist and work together collaboratively is really, really critical. So thank you. If anyone has questions about the kiosks or the legal centers, I will be able to answer some, but I can also direct you to the people who are, putting them together.
Okay.
There was a slowdown of it during COVID, but I believe they're gearing up for it. And again, I just want to thank Heather for all her work on that and also on this committee itself. Thank you.
Your Honor, are they going to have those kiosks at all public libraries or just certain ones? I
think the idea is to have them at all public libraries, I believe. I can't be, they're talking about pretty much having them at all the public libraries. And I know that work group in our public library Access to Justice work group and committee, we have quite a bit of membership in, when they hold a meeting with the librarians, we get dozens of librarians. It came out, we had a symposium, which was really well attended by not just obviously the judicial branch libraries and librarians, but also, who Jeffrey Dowd is in charge of, but also Dawn Laval, who's the director of all the public libraries in the state of Connecticut. She is also a very active, involved member on that work group, as is Krista Hess. So the three of them co-chair that work group, and it's quite active, quite successful, and they've come up with some tremendous initiatives, realizing that the first point of entry for legal services is often through libraries.
Yep.
So they're also trained on the program for legal services that Attorney Fika can talk about, that, about navigating, where to direct people, which is really important.
Yep. Great.
I think the idea is to have them legal corners or legal kiosks in every library, and to train librarians on, how to assist patrons.
No, that's terrific. That's great. I had not heard that before. That's great. Up next, grievance procedures. This was another recommendation out of the Justice Index survey, where they recommended that we had formal grievance procedures in place when an LEP individual had complaints regarding the services of an interpreter. We do not have such a formal process. There's an informal process that we do have in place that Ally oversees, that once we get complaints on how we handle them. So we do not have anything formal. Once again, thanks to Viv, legal is taking a look to see how other states handle those situations and what their formal processes are like. So they have somebody in their office who is researching that. Once they have that information, we'll share it with everybody, and then we'll work on developing a procedure here within the branch. Also being mindful of the fact that I need to have, in addition to us, I'm going to need to bring HR into that conversation, because there potentially are HR and or union issues that may come up with any sort of grievance process that we develop. So we'll have to talk to them to get them involved. So this is going to be more of a kind of a placeholder for future meetings as we work through that process of developing that. And that is the end of the formal agenda. I personally have no other business. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to bring to the table? Michelle. You're on mute, Michelle.
I'm so sorry.
That's good.
I had two items that I just wanted to bring up. One of them is, from my understanding, the remote hearings are here to stay, or in some form or another. And one of the things that I've been concerned about is that the instructions for teams, we don't have any Spanish or Portuguese or Polish translations. And I know that the team's instructions for attorneys, they say for attorneys and pro se's, but they are actually very long and they go into a lot of detail that I think are not really necessary for the average person that's just trying to log in and participate in a hearing. And so I was wondering if there's, first of all, any kind of one pager or two pager that explains teams for everybody, including English. But then in addition to that, if that document exists, if it could be translated, or kind of what the plan would be to deal with LEP individuals and these remote hearings. So that was the first one.
Okay.
And then
regarding that, Michelle, sorry. The actual, that initial, whatever, 30-page, 40-page document, I know has been translated into Spanish, Portuguese, and Polish. My understanding, it was supposed to be posted online. I don't know if I'll have to follow up to make sure that that actually did happen, but they were translated into all of those languages at the beginning of the pandemic, or when that document was created, I think in June of 2020. And I'll have to see if they were posted or not, but it was definitely supposed to be posted. But because it has been translated, we could definitely send you directly those three translations before it gets posted if it hasn't been. As for a short one-page document, honestly, that I'm not aware of any. I think it's a great idea because I think trying to read a 30 to 40-page manual on this stuff is not easy. But I don't know whether it exists, but I will follow up with the court ops folks to see if it exists, and if not, can it exist?
Mhm.
I see Justice Khan, then Brittany.
So, Michelle, that's a great suggestion. And I recently, a few weeks ago, went on to the internet website. There is a 3-page, I want to say it's a 3-page document or notice that goes out with a notice of a hearing. You have a virtual hearing required. In that notice is some basic instructions how to access. It includes on the first page, if you don't have internet access, Wi-Fi access, and you don't have a computer or a device that you can log on, we have remote hearing rooms in the courthouse. Please call this number, as soon as possible. And I looked at it to look at our remote room access and do we have them in every courthouse? So that's how I got a hold of that form. And the form went on to talk about things that you can do to improve your access during the virtual hearing, when to log on, general types of instructions. And I don't know if that shorter version has been translated. Obviously, if the 30-page has been, and it contains the same information, it wouldn't be that hard to translate 3 pages using, because it's the same information. So, Richard, and Allie, I will send you, or I can send this committee the form I'm talking about, and you can look at it. It looks like it appears, and it was updated. The one I printed was updated November 13, 2020.
Yes, I have that in front of me right now, Your Honor. I just pulled it up myself. So it's a 5-page document called Quick Reference Guide for Remote Court Proceedings.
Yeah.
Right.
which
I
I don't.
wonder if we could translate that. It seems to go out with notice of hearings, or at least put something on it that it's available in Spanish, Portuguese, or Polish, and then a link to our website. That would probably solve the problems, because I looked at it, it's written, appears to be written in more plain language. So like, I think it's the third, correct me if I'm wrong, but the third paragraph says, if you don't have equipment, if you don't have Wi-Fi connection, call us at this number, or contact the clerk's office. I think it's either a number or an email, so that, and says we have remote hearing rooms. So we should, translate that for sure.
That is definitely exactly what I think would be helpful for our LEP clients. And if that could also be on the LEP pages, because I just looked to see if that larger Teams document was on there, and I couldn't find it, but it could be somewhere further down on the list. But definitely that smaller instruction, that's exactly what I think would be helpful for. I mean, we could print it out to give to people, or if someone goes into the clerk's office and says, I got this notice, I don't understand what it says, I don't know anything about virtual hearings, the clerk would have some ability to print it out and give them the instructions in the other language.
Yep. No, absolutely. Very good point. Britt, did you have a comment on this? And then Brandon, and I know Michelle, you had another point.
Sure, I'll make it quick because I believe maybe Justice Khan found the same document I was going to refer to. Yeah. If you're on the website and you click on the left-hand side, the Connecticut Remote Guide, then go to a link that says Quick Cards. There's 4 or 5 shorter guides on how to get onto Teams. They are dense, and I'm not sure how plain language they are, but at least in terms of not being 30 pages, they are a little bit more accessible in that sense. So I just wanted to share that those were available on the website.
Okay. Very good. We may have to look at those to whether to translate the quick cards as well. Okay, thank you. Brandon.
Just two quick, actually 3 quick points. I think it's extremely important to do everything, all the above of what you're saying, but it's also extremely important that we make it known that if they do need translator services, that they're contacting us. My fear is if we put in a different language, here's how you connect, and they feel as though, oh, I can connect and everything's fine, and then they connect the day of the hearing and they speak Polish. So we just have to make sure that message, even though we're saying here is as clear as can be how to connect, we also need to make sure the message is out there. But if you need an interpreter, to obviously let us know. The other 2 points, I'm kind of loath to bring this up, and I may have mentioned it before, but it's sticking out of my mind. It's regarding the interpreter card. And I don't know if it was deliberate or if it's just stylistic or word choice, but the 4th paragraph down where it begins, what is a court interpreter? I don't know if anyone has it in front of him, but I'll read it. A court interpreter is a highly skilled bilingual language professional who masters a combination of languages and who possesses the technical ability to accurately transfer what is said from one language into another. Is that deliberate where we're saying transfer and not translate from one language to another? Okay.
Yeah, transfer. Mm-hmm.
So that stumped me initially, but I thought maybe that was deliberate, and I'm fine with that. On page 2, where we say what the court interpreter can do, that first box, and then the box to the right, it reads what the court interpreter cannot do. But on the box where we say what the court interpreter can do, when we list the bullets, we are actually saying the court interpreter will. And the next bullet, the court interpreter will. So it kind of sends a message, when I first read it, I thought a court interpreter can, and then if I remove will from all the bullets, they can interpret communication so you understand, they can interpret everything you say into English. That's kind of misconceiving because they have to do that. So it's more of a mandatory. They will do this, they will do that. So I just wonder down the road if it makes sense to remove can and replace it with the word will.
Okay.
That's an interesting point, Brandon. Yeah, we'll have to look at that when this gets revised.
Yes.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And I just wanted to point out if I could, for a second. The form I was referring to is called Quick Reference Guide for Remote Court, Connecticut Guide to Remote Hearings for Attorneys and Self-Represented Parties. And it is under, it's not under Quick Cards. It's under the virtual court proceedings. So if you go to Connecticut Remote Guide and virtual court proceedings, then there's a quick reference, Connecticut Guide to Remote Hearings for Attorneys and Self-Represented Parties. No, wait, sorry, my apologies. It's Quick Reference Guide for Remote Court Proceedings. It's 5 pages. And that's the one I believe that I'm talking about. It's a 5-page document. I have a remote court proceeding. What do I do? And then it's in arrow in bold. If you do not have a phone or access to the internet and a device to video conference, let the court know as soon as possible. We have remote rooms, and then it's like step by step how to do it. So it's meant for self-represented individuals or individuals trying to log on. I think that would be a critical form to translate. That's the one that I was thinking about. I'm not sure if that's the same one. So it's definitely in the website in that area, but it's not under Quick Guides. So I just wanted to clarify that. I don't know if that's the one, you know, that you were thinking about, Brittany, but that's the one I was referencing.
I'm looking at the one you referenced now, Justice Khan. I think this one may be the one to translate because it has a more holistic, how do I get the link from the clerks? Who do I contact? And I believe in the Quick Cards, it's more topic specific. So how do I work teams? I think this one would have more information that the pro ses would need.
I just wanted to be sure that you and I were thinking of the same card. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
No.
And I totally agree with Brandon's point.
Michelle, you had another point?
Okay, so this is more of a question. I wanted to know what the process is when there's a case where someone has requested an interpreter, say for hearing number 1. Is there some kind of notation that goes into your system that would kind of alert the clerks or whoever that an interpreter is needed for subsequent hearings, or how does that work?
I think based on receiving and processing requests, what we think happens is the file is noted. There is somewhere in the file, they know that there is a need for an interpreter. So usually the day the case is heard, right away, either the same day or the day after we get the request for the following date. So it's pretty much happening very naturally at this point. Yeah.
And
but
so,
I think it would depend on the location at this point. I don't know if there is an identifier on the system, but I don't think there is one. It's just the physical file.
Yeah, I know the clerks have to put in a request for every event that they need the interpreter for. And I don't believe there's something electronically, so I believe it's probably as based each court office probably does it differently. There's nothing in an electronic system that triggers it. The court clerk or probation officer, whenever they need the service, they need to request it.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to figure out if there was an easier way to alert the clerk's office, but it seems like if we just send an email or call a few days ahead of time, we should be okay.
Yeah, or as early in advance as once you know the court dates, and that gets communicated to them that your client needs a certain interpreter, then the more advanced notice, the better.
I appreciate that. I also want to just put a shout out to, I don't know who the Urdu interpreter is who helped me in one of my cases, but it was the best experience I've had with an interpreter in a long time. So I don't know. So thank you.
That's wonderful. One great advantage of this remote hearing is that we've been able to access great interpreters from out of state. And we have this distribution email list with all the program managers from other states. So for all these hard to find languages, we have been able to work with really, really great interpreters.
All right. Oh, Your Honor.
I just want to give a similar sort of shout out. I attended and actually facilitated a meeting of the National Chairs of Access to Justice, which happened December 2nd and 3rd. And I was the facilitator of half of the states attending. So I had about 15 states or 14 states in my group. One of the states that presented first by alphabetically was Alaska. And Alaska is not only one of the largest states, they have about 120 languages, and some of them are native languages. So their primary focus now is language access. And I just want to say that I was so proud to talk about some of the things that we have in Connecticut. And Allie, I hope you don't mind, as if you don't have enough work on your plate, and you, Richard, but I did encourage Pamela Washington, who is heading the effort in Alaska, to reach out to you. I mean, they're just starting the process of changing their forms and getting forms translated, figuring out how to do requests for interpreters. So if you hear from Pamela Washington, that it was because I suggested that she reach out to you and to Richard. And so I just want to give a shout out, because it's often when I go to these national meetings that I realize, yes, we have so much work left to do here in Connecticut, but when I compare to what I see in other states, it just makes me really proud, and really, I just feel really fortunate to work with all of you who are in your respective roles, who give us great ideas and suggestions and are so talented. And so we still have a long way to go, but I think that it just makes me feel really pleased and proud. I also want to tell you that the Department of Justice, President Biden, reconstituted the National Access to Justice Department. And the head attorney from the Department of Justice, Main Justice, was a keynote speaker. So the efforts of access to justice on all fronts, including language access, I think we're going to see a lot more activity and focus on access to justice. And I think language access is going to be a priority. So the fact that we've been working at it consistently, sometimes not as expeditiously as we had hoped, but still accomplishing all this, I just want to say that it's really important, and it makes me I feel fortunate to work with folks like you, and kudos to all of you and for your work. So thank you.
No, thank you, Your Honor. Honestly, we couldn't do it without you spearheading all of this. Honestly, so thank you.
It's all of you, but thanks. And Heather Collins, who I cannot see on the screen, but I know is with us as well.
So our next meeting likely will be in February. That'll give me, at the end of the year in January, I'll work on drafting the committee report during the month of January, and work on getting the training wrapped up. So hopefully we can meet in February and kind of finalize everything. Will probably be the next plan. I do want to wish everybody, because we won't be meeting until February, a happy holidays, a safe holiday season for everybody. And unless anybody has anything else, I will turn it over to Justice Khan to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you again, Richard, Allie, my co-chairs. Thank you, Heather, who I can see very much, for putting all of this together. I know you're all very busy, lawyers, supervisors, managers, directors, and so that you took the time for this work and to be with us. Those of you who are official members and those of you who are consistent, incredible contributors, Michelle, Fika, I thank you all for your time. I wish you a wonderful holiday and look forward to our next meeting. And thank you all so much for all your work on this committee.
Thank you, Justice Khan.
Thank you,
Justice Khan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Take care.